I'm not sure what your idea of a dream home is, but mine was pretty clear. A cozy log cabin tucked away in the North Carolina mountains, crisp mountain air, peaceful surroundings, and finally no one breathing down my neck about where to park or how tall my mailbox needs to be. But as it turns out, even dreams come with hidden terms and conditions, real ones, like hostile fine print that shows up at 1 a.m., accompanied by fake cops and a 13-year-old kid who did something none of us ever expected. If you've ever tangled with a control-obsessed neighbor or just feel like yelling into the void about HOA insanity, hit the comments. Trust me, I get it. It was me, my wife Rachel, and our son Eli, aged 13, who just settled into a beautiful log cabin nestled in the scenic North Carolina hills. After years of squeezing into cramped city apartments, this felt like striking gold. The porch wrapped around the house, pine trees stretched to the sky, and people actually waved when you passed by. While we were still unpacking, Rachel exhaled with a smile. Somewhere we can finally breathe. I was thinking the same thing as I watched Eli light up, running through the woods like he'd been freed from a cage. Rachel snapped a photo of him laughing on the porch and whispered, "I hope this doesn't fade." I didn't say it, but deep down, I wanted that too. It may be too much. In hindsight, that level of bliss should have set off alarm bells. When does life just hand you something perfect without slipping a trapdoor underneath? We hadn't even finished unloading the moving truck when she made her entrancey Donna Beckett, mid-50s, dressed like she was heading to a shareholders meeting, and gripping a clipboard like it was a sword. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," she said with a smile that stopped short of her eyes. "I'm the president of the HOA." The way she said it, you'd think she ran the whole state. I wasn't sure if I was just being paranoid, but something about her rubbed me the wrong way instantly. Maybe it's because I work in home security. I've installed enough systems to spot someone who craves control. "And Donna?" You could feel it radiating off her before she even spoke. Then she pulled out a binder the size of a phone book, titled Community Standards Manual. I'm not exaggerating. This thing had pages on everything from the exact height your mailbox should be, measured down to a 1/4 inch, to the only paint colors allowed, all the charm of a hospital cafeteria. There were watering schedules, curtain requirements, even a dress code for what was visible from the street. I stared at the manual in disbelief. Curtain-style rules? Really? These guidelines help protect our property values and uphold the neighborhood's appearance, she said with the air of someone bestowing a great gift. I looked over her shoulder at Rachel, who was giving me the same "what the hell is this" look. I was thinking. We set up a simple basketball hoop for Eli the next day. Nothing fancy, just something so he could enjoy having space for once in his life. Apparently, that was a major offense. 2 days later, a violation notice was slapped onto our front door like we were criminals. Unauthorized recreational equipment visible from the street. The fine? $200. $200 for a basketball hoop. For a second, I genuinely doubted myself. Had I missed something? Was this dream home actually a nightmare with manicured lawns and weekly inspections? I called the number on the citation, and of course it was Donna. She answered with this syrupy tone, talking about community harmony and necessary enforcement. I wish I could tell you I kept it cool on the phone, but come on, who wouldn't snap at that kind of power trip? Then things took a turn into the bizarre. The next morning, we walked outside and the basketball hoop was gone, vanished, like it had never existed. In its place was another note: violation corrected, fine increased to $400. Someone had entered our property in the dead of night and taken our kid's basketball hoop. Let that settle in for a second. I stood there in my pajamas, staring at the empty space, wondering if I was losing it. Was this real? Did someone seriously break onto our land and steal from us over a made-up rule? It was so absurd that part of me expected Ashton Kutcher to jump out yelling, "You're on a hidden camera show." But the crushed look on Eli's face when he saw the hoop was gone, that hit hard. It wasn't a joke, it was personal. Later that night, Eli pulled me aside, voice trembling. "Dad," he whispered, "I saw someone watching the house last night." With binoculars. The fear in his eyes hit me like a gut punch. My own son, scared in his new home, because someone had decided to turn the neighborhood into a dictatorship. He wasn't just spooked. His voice cracked in a way that told me this wasn't imagination or nerves. I stayed up that night, didn't sleep a minute. I sat in the dark, watching the street. The next morning, I knelt beside Eli and gently asked him to describe what he'd seen. He said the figure stood across the street for about 20 minutes, definitely holding binoculars, just staring at our house. Even now, I can't believe I didn't call the police immediately, but back then, I was still convincing myself this was just some overzealous HOA president who'd back off eventually. That night, I kept rereading the violation notice and asking myself the same thing. Was Donna just a perfectionist with too much authority, a broken bar, or had we just become the targets of someone who'd do anything to stay in power? From that point on, the notices came like clockwork. Every few days, another absurd complaint pinned to our door like some twisted version of an advent calendar. Grass a 1/4 inch over height limit. I measured it with Aurora. It wasn't even close. Improper welcome mat. We were hit with another citation, this time for choosing the wrong color scheme. Apparently, our shade of blue wasn't in line with the approved browns. Then came a warning because our trash can was visible 3 minutes after the designated pickup window. The only reason? I rolled it back to the garage 30 seconds late. At some point, I started measuring lawn height and timing trash can movements like I was prepping for an audit. Maybe I thought having everything documented would help this nonsense make sense. But the truth was, it was becoming obsessive. Who even has time to track someone's garbage schedule with a stopwatch? Apparently Adana does. She seemed to spend more time watching our home than we spent living in it. One afternoon, while I was washing the car, I caught her across the street, arms folded, eyeing our house like it might commit a crime. When we locked eyes, she didn't flinch or even act embarrassed. She just gave me a smug, almost sarcastic little wave and kept right on staring. I stood there stunned, soap dripping off the sponge in my hand, wondering if she genuinely thought this was normal behavior or if she was just that far gone. Most people would at least pretend not to be spying on their neighbors. Not Donna. She acted like surveillance was her sacred duty. Every instinct told me to march over and demand answers, but my background in security kept me grounded. I knew better than to escalate directly. Instead, I began keeping records of everything. Then things got worse. One night around 2 a.m., I found a handwritten note stuffed into our mailbox. It read, "Non-compliant residents will be removed." No name, no return address, but the handwriting matched the violation notices we'd been receiving. Someone was threatening us. In the middle of the night, this had gone far beyond your average HOA control trip. I felt an icy weight settle deep in my gut. Why would anyone go to these lengths over a kid's basketball hoop or lawn height? But that handwriting didn't lie. And the message? Loud and clear. We were no longer dealing with an obsessive rule enforcer. We were in the sights of someone far more dangerous. So, I started digging. I pulled up the official bylaws for our neighborhood and cross-checked every single citation Donna had issued us. What I found was staggering. Nearly half the rules she was enforcing didn't exist in the real documents. She was inventing them. One by one, I went through every legitimate community regulation and then compared them to the made-up guidelines from Donna's personal rulebook. Mailbox heights that were nowhere to be found in the official documents. Paint color policies that had never been put to a vote. Even lawn care guidelines that looked like they were written in her handwriting. It finally hit me. No proper HOA would ever have rules about welcome mat colors. But back then, I was still trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I was just being too optimistic. Or maybe I just didn't want to believe someone could be this bold with their lies. That's when I got the email. It came from an anonymous account. No real name, just a subject line that read, "Check the community forum archives. You're not her first target." Inside was a short message and a list of dates. The sender had clearly used a fake name, but their instructions were very specific. So I looked, and what I found chilled me. Between 2019 and 2023, families had posted eerily similar complaints on the old forum, and now hidden deep in the site's archives. Inflated fines, harassment in the middle of the night, even stolen property. Every post followed the same disturbing arc. Someone moved in, received escalating citations, dealt with bizarre and threatening behavior, and within 6 to 8 months, They were gone, sold their homes and vanished. I wasn't being paranoid. This wasn't just one overly strict neighbor with a control complex. This was a pattern, a deliberate strategy to force families out. We were just the newest victims in a long-running campaign of intimidation. That anonymous tipster had handed me a timeline, and we were right on track to reach the next level of harassment. The very next day, we got hit with a fresh notice. Total, $800 for accumulated violations. Deadline, 48 hours or face legal enforcement. $800 for a lawn that was supposedly too tall and a welcome mat that didn't match Donna's made-up aesthetic guidelines. At first, I actually laughed at the absurdity, but deep down, there was nothing funny about it. Donna was trying to financially bully us into silence. And the scary part, it probably worked on others. How many families just wrote the check and shut up, hoping the nightmare would end? I caught myself searching online for how to survive a hostile hoe. That's how defeated I felt. Later that night, Rachel sat beside me and said quietly, "Maybe we should just pay it, follow the rules, keep to ourselves." Is all this really worth the stress? I could see the fatigue written all over her face. This wasn't just about lawn measurements or fines anymore. This was about our sanity, our peace, and that was exactly what Donna wanted: to fear and surrender. Eli had started closing his blinds every night, even in the summer. Rachel had stopped unpacking the last few boxes. We didn't talk about it, but it was like we all knew deep down that we might have made a huge mistake. I looked at Rachel, exhausted and worn thin, and for a second, I almost agreed with her. Maybe giving in was the smarter move. Pay the fine, lay low, hope it goes away. But then I thought about Elia, too scared to sleep without the blinds shut. And I thought about the families before us, the ones who ran because they didn't know how to fight back or didn't have the tools to try. And that's when something changed in me. I still can't believe I actually considered paying off what was basically extortion just for a little peace of mind. But the mental pressure was intense. That night, while organizing the thickening file of evidence we'd been collecting, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. Was I trying to protect my family from a pushy neighborhood busybody, a broken bar, or had I already walked us straight into Donna's carefully planned trap? A trap that might escalate beyond passive-aggressive notes and phony finesse, something that could put us in actual danger? It was time to turn the tables. I sat down and composed a formal letter, thoroughly citing the actual community bylaws. I laid out, point by point, every discrepancy between the official rules and the bogus violations Donna had been inventing. I ended it with a request for an emergency board meeting to address what I diplomatically called unauthorized rule enforcement and record-keeping inconsistencies. The letter was professional, polite, legally airtight. I spent hours fine-tuning it, making sure each reference was accurate, each line respectful but firm. Looking back, I might have over-prepared, but I wanted to give Donna every possible off-ramp before this turned into a legal showdown. Maybe I should have been more aggressive from the jump, but part of me knew that building a clear trail of attempts to resolve things peacefully could be crucial, especially if this escalated to court or involved law enforcement later. Donna's response? She didn't schedule the board meeting. She canceled it before it was ever even planned. Instead, she fired back with a threat that made my jaw drop. Pay $2,000 in outstanding violations within 24 hours, or face action by the sheriff's department for repeated disruption of community order. $2,000 for imaginary infractions. I had to read her email 3 times. The leap from $800 to $2,000 happened overnight just because I submitted one fact-based letter. It was unbelievable. Did she actually think fake threats of law enforcement would scare someone who installs home security systems for a living? Either Donna was completely deluded about her power, or she was desperate enough to throw anything at the wall to maintain her grip on the neighborhood. Regardless, she'd made a huge mistake because she put her threats in writing. Now, it was my move. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes before dialing her number. I hesitated. What if she called my bluff? What if I made things worse? I pressed call anyway. When she answered, I kept my tone calm and buzziness like and made sure my audio recorder was capturing everything. I'd really like to meet this sheriff's department liaison who handles HOA-related arrests, I told her, feigning interest rather than confrontation, especially since the county records show there's no such department in existence. I was baiting her, waiting to see if she'd try to bluff her way through. For 10 long seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then she cracked, "My cousin Rick works security and enforcement." She snapped, "All pretense gone. He'll be more than happy to stop by and explain community compliance to you personally. Around here, we take care of residents our way." Bingo. Donna had just admitted, in her own words, that she was planning to use her cousin, an unofficial security figure, to intimidate us under the guise of law enforcement. And I had it all recorded. I honestly didn't expect her to go that far. I thought she'd back down once confronted with facts. But instead, she doubled down so hard she practically handed me a confession on a silver platter. Was she really foolish enough to threaten us with a fake cop over a recorded call? Apparently, yes. Her voice, clear as day on the audio file, confirmed what I'd feared. Donna was escalating. She intended to use fake authority figures to intimidate USA physically, if necessary. That was the final straw. I upgraded everything: more motion sensors, enhanced audio capture, tightened camera placement, night vision, full spectrum surveillance. This wasn't just about protecting our home anymore, it was about building an airtight case. Thankfully, my background in home security was finally coming in handy. I knew exactly what evidence would stand up in court and what wouldn't. There was an irony to it all. The very skills I'd spent years using to safeguard other people's homes were now being used to protect my own family, a broken bar from a neighbor who had completely lost her grip on reality. I installed professional-grade security cameras with full audio and night vision, motion alerts, remote backups, the works. If Donna wanted to play games using fake law enforcement, she was about to find out what it meant to mess with someone who actually knew how real security worked. Then came the social fallout. At the grocery store, people I chatted with just days before suddenly turned their carts around when they saw me. A woman who once brought us cookies now crossed the street instead of waving. Word was spreading. We were fighting back. And the neighbors? They were acting like we were contagious. One evening, while I was walking down the block, a woman passing by with her dog leaned in and whispered, "Just pay the fines, honey. Don't fight her. No one ever wins." The fear in her voice said it all. Donna had ruled this neighborhood through fear for a long time, and no one had dared to stand up to her. Until now. How long had Donna been getting away with this? How many families had she quietly pushed out through this same routine of fear and manipulation? The deeper I looked, the more obvious it became. We weren't just standing up for ourselves anymore. We were standing up for everyone who had been too scared, too isolated, or too financially drained to fight back. But the toll was starting to show. Rachel looked more worn down every day, and Eli wasn't the same carefree kid we'd seen that first week on the porch. A new family moved in just 2 blocks down. I went over to welcome them, and the woman froze like I was holding a lit match. Later that evening, Eli found a flyer in our mailbox. It read, "Non-compliant residents create hostile living environments." Our address was printed in bold, right there in black and white. While digging through more documents, I stumbled on something that put everything into focus. Donna's family-owned construction business had somehow been awarded every single repair and maintenance contract in the community for the last 5 years at rates nearly 40% higher than local averages. Coincidence? Not likely. It was all starting to make sense. The targeted harassment, the absurd citations, the forced home sales, the emergency repairs that always followed. This wasn't just about control, it was about profit. Donna had built a pay-to-stay empire under the disguise of an HOA, and we were the first ones stubborn enough to stay and document everything instead of packing up and fleeing like the rest. The financial angle explained so much. Drive out homeowners, declare properties in violation, then push through expensive repairs that only her company was conveniently qualified to handle. Rachel asked me one night, flat out, "Do you think she's really going to follow through on these threats? She's boxed herself in." I told her, "People like Donna, they double down when someone resists. They don't back off." But even as I said it, a part of me was asking the same questions. Am I putting my family in harm's way? What if she really does send fake cops to our home? What if this spirals into something worse than harassment? Looking back, I should have called the actual police the moment she threatened law enforcement impersonation, but part of me still clung to the hope that she'd eventually realize she'd gone too far. That night, I did one last sweep of our security system. Every camera working, audio synced, motion detection primed. I had a gut feeling Donna's next move was going to cross a linea, either end this nightmare or turn it into something far more dangerous. Then, just past 1 a.m., the motion sensors screamed to life. A thunderous knock pounded on our front door. Bang, bang, bang. A voice shouted, "Sheriff's Department." "Open the door immediately. We've received multiple complaints about this property." My heart was racing, but my training kicked in. Years of protecting clients were now being used to protect my own home, and I knew one thing for sure: real officers don't sound like bad actors in a low-budget drama. The timing was wrong, the tone was off, and law enforcement doesn't respond to HOA complaints in the dead of night, especially not without a warrant. I moved straight to the security hub, making sure every camera was rolling in high def. If they wanted a scene, I'd give them ONIA with court-admissible footage. Through the live feed, I saw the full performance. Donna's cousin Rick stood on the porch, stuffed into a cheap-looking security outfit like he'd borrowed it from a costume shop. His plastic badge caught the porch light with a glint so artificial, it looked like a toy from a gas station aisle. I swear, I could even see a price tag dangling from the back. Donna herself stood right behind him, holding a clipboard in one hand and a flashlight in the other like she was directing a SWAT raid. I actually had to bite the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing. It was that absurd. This wasn't intimidation. It was theater. Rick barked in his most serious tone, "We're here to perform a community inspection and confiscate non-compliant items." He tried to sound authoritative, but it was more like a middle schooler playing security guard at recess. "You have 30 seconds to open the door voluntarily, or we'll be forced to make entry." Forced entry for HOA violations? They'd officially lost it. I called out calmly through the closed window, "Before we open anything, we'll need to see official warrants and legal ID." Let them dig their own hole while the cameras rolled. There was a pause, an awkward silence that told me they hadn't expected resistance. Most people would probably open the door in panic the second someone yells "Sheriff," but not us. I knew better. My line of work has always taught one golden rule: never assume the badges verify everything, document everything, never confront without evidence. Rachel stood frozen at the kitchen island, one hand clutching her phone, the other gripping the edge of the counter like it was keeping her grounded. I could see the look in her eyes, and not fear of what was outside, but fear I might throw the door open and charge headfirst into a trap. Every logical part of my brain was telling me, stay calm, keep recording, let the footage do the work. But there was another part, of something primal, protective, angry, that screamed to throw the door open and end this circus once and for all. Then I heard Eli behind me. He'd woken up, standing in the hallway in his pajamas, eyes wide, voice quiet. "Dad. Are those real? Dad, are those real police?" Eli whispered, his voice laced with doubt. "No, son," I told him softly. "Real officers follow legal procedures. They don't threaten to break into someone's home over basketball hoops or decorative lawn ornaments." I wish I'd said more. I reassured him, promised it would all be okay. But in that moment, my focus was fixed on the chaos unfolding on our doorstep. Rick twisted the doorknob and leaned into it, pressing his shoulder against the frame like he actually meant to force his way in. "We don't need warrants for community compliance checks," he shouted, his voice rising in desperation. "Open the door or we're coming in anyway." The absurdity would have been laughable if it weren't so dangerous. These weren't actual officers, but they were still threatening to break and enter, and my 13-year-old son was watching every second of it unfold in real time. What would you do if someone impersonating the police tried to storm your house in the middle of the night? Fight back? Hide? Hope they'd go away? My instinct was to defend my family, but I knew any rash move could be used against USA. Twisted, clipped, and spun into something it wasn't. As long as I stayed still and the cameras rolled, the truth would be on our side. From his bedroom, Eli reappeared, holding his Nerf blaster, a toy gun decked out with LED lights and sound effects. He'd been playing with it earlier that evening. In the confusion, The toy looked real enough to startle someone not thinking clearly. He was scared, but there was a fierce light in his eyes that made me proud and scared all at once. "I'm going to help," he whispered. Before I could stop him, he moved toward the door. I should have stopped him. I should have told him number, but maybe he needed this moment to feel brave in his own way. And honestly, that toy blaster might just be the most effective tool in the house right now. Flashy, noisy, and non-lethal, but just menacing enough to make fools flinch. Rick slammed his shoulder into the door again, trying to play the action hero. That's when Eli made his move. He cracked the door open just wide enough to stick out the barrel of his Nerf gun. "Get away from our house," he shouted. His voice rang out with a strength I hadn't heard before, loud, clear, fearless. He pulled the trigger. The toy lit up and blared with dramatic pew-pew effects. Flashing lights cut through the darkness. Rick leapt backward so fast he nearly tumbled off the porch. His fake badge popped off his chest and clattered to the floor with a hollow, plastic rattle. Through the lens of the security camera, I caught a perfect glimpse of a dangling Party City tag as it hit the ground. Donna shrieked something unintelligible, ending in a furious, "You'll regret this." Then they bolted. Rick stumbled on the steps, cursing, one hand clutching his waistband. Donna was already sprinting to the car. Her flashlight tumbled from her grip and rolled into a ditch. She didn't even look back for it. They were embarrassed, rattled, run off by a 13-year-old with a toy. I nearly laughed, but instead, I began tagging the video clips of Rick at the door, Rick pressing against the frame, Donna signaling from behind, the door opening, the toy gun lighting up, the badge falling, all in high definition, with multiple camera angles and timestamps. If I were reviewing this for someone else, I'd call it the most incriminating footage in Anadrama-nest history. Eli stood in the hallway, his breathing heavy, the Nerf gun hanging loosely from his hand. "Did I do the right thing?" he asked, adrenaline still radiating off him. "You defended your family against grown-ups pretending to have power," I told him, wrapping an arm around his shoulder. "That took real courage. And sometimes, even a toy is enough when your heart's in the right place." That night, he didn't go back to his room. He curled up beside me on the bedroom floor, Nerf blaster still in hand. I let him stay there. Truthfully, I didn't want him far from me either. Long after the house fell silent, I stayed up watching the footage over and over again. Donna shrieking, Rick stumbling, the plastic badge skittering across the floor, my son holding his ground while adults in costume tried to scare us. Underneath the pride, something darker stirred. What kind of place had we moved into where a child had to defend his home from adults pretending to be law enforcement? That's not normal. It's not okay. And in my gut, I knew this wasn't the conclusion. It was just the beginning. Now we had proof. We had footage. We had the truth. And that meant Donna's ridiculous little clipboard dictatorship had crossed the linear from laughable to criminal. But the real question wasn't whether we could prove it. It was whether anyone would believe a regular family over the polished image of a smiling Anadrama-nest president who just got outsmarted by a teenager with a toy. Would she come back, more ruthless, more calculated this time, with backup? Within 48 hours, I'd filed for an emergency board meeting, citing criminal behavior by Anadrama-nest leadership. I didn't say what I had. I wanted the timing to strike with full effect. The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the community center, and by then, the entire neighborhood would be watching. I could feel the energy pulsing through the neighborhood as whispers spread about what really happened between us and Donna. Some folks were clearly still in her camp, others seemed intrigued but hesitant, while a few brave neighbors approached me quietly to share their own unsettling experiences. One told me they got fined for hanging a bird feeder. Another received a warning for leaving a garden chair too close to the hedge. Someone else was flagged for wind chimes that apparently violated some kind of noise policy. When we arrived at the community center for the emergency meeting, the place was packed tighter than I'd ever seen. Folding chairs filled every corner, people lined the back walls, and a thick, buzzing tension hung in the air like static before a storm. Donna walked in early, of course, with Rick trailing beside her like a prop. For reasons beyond understanding, he was still clinging to that ridiculous costume and his security get-up, even though it looked like it had been cobbled together from 3 different uniforms. The belt sagged, the badge hung crooked, and none of the patches matched. Donna, on the other hand, was in full performance mode, back straight, chin lifted, clipboard clutched to her chest like armor. She radiated over-rehearsed righteousness like a bad actress at opening night. Without missing a beat, she launched into her monologue, painting us as volatile residents who assaulted community officers simply doing their duty. If I hadn't had proof, I'll admit, she might have fooled someone. Her voice cracked in just the right places. Her eyes shimmered with perfectly timed tears. She labeled us unstable, accused us of aggression, even claimed we coached our 13-year-old son to launch an attack on innocent volunteers using weapons. According to Donna, we weren't just problematic homeowners, we were launching psychological warfare against the Andromenest. It was hard to say which part was more absurd, the script or the fact that some people in the audience actually seemed to be buying it. I watched the 3 other board members squirm. Their expressions were tight, but by the rules, they had to let her speak. Donna dominated the floor with a storm of jargon and fake authority. She clicked through a ridiculous PowerPoint loaded with doctored charts, fake infractions, printed out emails, and logs with fabricated timestamps. At one point, she referred to me as the hostile male homeowner, but something felt different this time. Maybe it was the way Sandra, one of the board members, kept narrowing her eyes at those charts, or how Mark, the treasurer, refused to meet Donna's gaze. The whole room didn't seem quite as sold on her show as they usually were. Then came Rick's turn, still wearing his Halloween quality outfit, still clinging to the role like it was life or death. He spun his tail like he'd just escaped combat, described Eli's Nerf blaster as a high-powered electronic projectile device, made himself out to be a compliance officer under siege. He contorted his face into mock fear as if reliving some Watson ambush. If I didn't know the truth, I might have been taken in, but his delivery was unraveling and fast. With every over-the-top detail, more eyebrows lifted. When he mentioned incoming fire, someone in the second row actually snorted. Finally, it was my turn. I didn't yell, didn't match their drama. I simply walked to the front, opened my laptop, and hooked it up to the projector. I think the security footage speaks for itself, I said calmly. The room went silent, so quiet I could hear a chair creak. I clicked play. There was Rick, trying to force open the door, his badge clearly fake. Donna looming behind him like a drill sergeant with a clipboard. Lights flashing, Eli's voice shouting, "Get away from our house!" The Nerf blaster, the startled retreat, and then, clear as day, Rick's plastic badge hitting the porch, complete with a visible Party City price tag fluttering in the spotlight. Gasps rippled across the room. Someone near the front murmured, "What the hell?" Another whispered, "Oh my god." But I wasn't finished. I played the audio recording next. Donna's voice, crisp and unmistakable. "My cousin Rick works security and enforcement. He'll be happy to explain community compliance to you personally. We handle problem residents our way around here." That one line hit the room like a thunderclap. Suddenly, the board members looked stunned. Mark blinked rapidly. Sandra covered her mouth. "Donna," one board member said, voice tight, "you sent someone impersonating law enforcement to a resident's home?" Another leaned in, louder and angrier. "That's not Andromenest enforcement. That's criminal harassment." For the first time all night, Donna's composure cracked. Her face twitched. She tried to speak, but the words didn't stick. Her eyes scanned the room, searching desperately for an ally. But even Rick was inching backward, shrinking into his sagging uniform. And then, like watching a dam burst, Rick broke. Okay, he blurted out. "The uniform wasn't real. I borrowed it from my job at the outlet mall security. She gave me $200 and told me it was just to scare him a little." His voice shook, his hands flailed. "I didn't know the kid had a blaster. I didn't think," Rick muttered, voice cracking. But the more he spoke, the deeper the hole got. Turns out, this wasn't the first time. Other families had gotten similar visits. Some were confused, some were scared, others simply left, never knowing what exactly had happened. None of them had video evidence until now. I pulled up one last file, a document set. Timestamps. Violation notices, all issued by Donna, with no record of board approval. 5 households over 4 years. All fined, all pressured, all gone. and every single property had later undergone community improvement projects. Donna personally pushed through the anadrama nest. The pattern couldn't have been clearer. Mark took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Sandra had her nose buried in the nest bylaw manual, flipping pages like she was loading ammunition. The vote was swift and lopsided. Donna was suspended immediately, pending a criminal investigation. The board voted unanimously to notify the anadrama nest's attorney and contact local law enforcement. As Donna stormed out, her heels clicking across the tile like gunshots as she spat threats about legal retaliation and slanderous campaigns. But the crowd wasn't on her side anymore. What about the Garkas? Someone called. And the Johnsons? Another added. Didn't they leave after that creepy night visit? Donna didn't respond. She just kept walking. Rick shuffled behind her, both hands gripping that worthless fake badge like it could still protect him from the truth. I watched their car disappear down the winding hill, and for the first time in months a maybe long draw I exhaled. We hadn't just made it through, we'd exposed something rotten. We'd won. But looking around the room at the shell-shocked neighbors, the pale board members, the slow settling dust, I realized this wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. Donna wasn't the type to slink off quietly. The way she walked out, the venom in her voice, the way she clung to her last shred of control, and no, she wasn't done, not by a long shot. And next time, she wouldn't come with a clipboard and a rent-a-cop cousin in tow. She'd come back with lawyers, or worse. Within a week, the local news stations started receiving glossy press releases, dressed up in sleek letterhead and dripping with spin. The new narrative: Donna, the misunderstood hero, a lifelong anadrama nest volunteer, unfairly villainized by newcomers who weaponized their child against well-meaning neighborhood officials. Her PR firm was working overtime, churning out damage control faster than most people check their emails. But facts are stubborn things, and video footage, it doesn't lie the way professionally written press releases do. Sure, the average reader might fall for the drama if they hadn't seen the actual security footage of Rick in a knockoff police costume trying to barge into our house at 1 in the morning. Did Donna seriously think she could sell impersonating law enforcement as community outreach? Her campaign escalated from denial to outright fantasy. She claimed our video was AI-generated, a deepfake created by tech-savvy malcontents. According to her, we'd faked everything, a fabricated HD footage just to ruin her. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. I wish I could say I felt bad watching her spiral. But how do you pity someone who bullied kids and pensioners out of their homes for profit? Her online rants got more erratic by the day. Wild accusations, paranoid posts. She claimed we were part of some vast conspiracy to destroy her family's legacy and sabotage their business. At school, Eli came home unusually quiet. Some kid said I pulled a gun on a cop. He mumbled, "Hoodie up, gaze low." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about clearing our name anymore. This was about protecting our son from Donna's lies, from a community turned upside down, from the ripple effects of one woman's obsession with power. The digital warfare escalated fast. Donna's team fought to suppress the footage, flooding takedown requests across multiple platforms. They filed fake copyright claims, cited false privacy violations, even argued the footage endangered Rick's safety. But the internet, it doesn't just resist censorship, it turns it into sport. For every takedown, 3 new versions popped up. One had clown music, another was subtitled in German, a third stitched Donna's voice into a remix. It became viral, the kind of viral you can't scrub clean. No PR team on earth could undo it. That's when a reporter from a regional paper reached out. She'd seen the video. She'd been working on a multi-county expose tilde copyright about abuse within hostile communities. What we had: timestamps, video, audio, and a pattern was the missing piece she needed. She was relentless. Within days, she uncovered years' worth of financial records. Turns out, every improvement project Donna pushed through the anadrama nest, her family's construction company had landed every single contract. 5 years of padded invoices, community adjustments priced 38–40% above market rate, kickbacks, sweetheart deals, all hidden in plain sight. Our little neighborhood saga had just blown open into a full-scale fraud investigation, and when the newspaper article dropped with our story front and center, under the headline, HOA president's family profits from community contracts under a cloud of threats and intimidation. We knew the fallout had only just begun. While the residents endured hardship, our surveillance footage became the key piece of evidence in something far larger, a widespread case of financial exploitation spanning over 5 years. The journalist uncovered that 7 separate families had been forced out due to Donna's relentless campaigns of intimidation. All during the same period her family's construction business was being awarded inflated maintenance contracts. The pattern was undeniable: intimidate homeowners into leaving, then cash in on the necessary repair work their absence conveniently created. What we initially mistook for personal vendettas turned out to be part of a well-oiled criminal operation. More families began to share their experiences. Each story followed a disturbingly familiar script of phony violations, harassment at night, items vanishing from their yards, and a constant psychological assault meant to push them into selling. Seeing it all documented in one place was staggering. It wasn't just us. It was dozens of families, thousands upon thousands of dollars in illegitimate penalties, and a neighborhood paralyzed by fear under the thumb of its own HOA president. The report revealed that Donna's family company had pocketed over $200,000 through exaggerated or unnecessary contracts, all made possible by bullying people out of their homes. The district attorney soon launched a criminal case for fraud, harassment, and impersonation. Even the state attorney general got involved due to possible mail fraud tied to those forged violation notices. What had started as a neighborhood dispute had become a full-blown legal firestorm involving multiple agencies. The FBI was even brought in to assess potential racketeering. Given the organized structure of the scam under the cover of HOA regulations, Donna's empire collapsed faster than she could find lawyers to represent her. During a live interview, a reporter held up a still from our video of the Party City badge caught midair. Donna visibly froze, her confident smile cracked. "No comment," she muttered, walking off camera. That clip replayed on the evening news over and over again. Neighbors, long silenced by fear, finally stepped into the light. They spoke openly about being financially devastated by baseless fines and seeing elderly members of the community bullied into selling their homes below market value. The emotional damage was immense. Kids too frightened to play outside, retirees drained of their savings trying to fight bogus citations, and entire families uprooted by paranoia and stress. Donna's campaign of fear ran deeper and affected more lives than we ever imagined. Once the floodgates opened, stories poured in non-stop. The change in the community was both immediate and profound. Property values that had quietly dropped for years began to rebound as news spread that Donna's reign was over. Families who had nearly given up on their homes chose instead to stay and rebuild. For the first time in years, it felt like a real neighborhood, a one where people smiled, waved, and felt safe enough to chat on the sidewalks again. People I hadn't even met before began to drop by. One neighbor who'd never so much as nodded at us showed up with a plate of cookies. "I didn't know how bad it was," she said. "I'm sorry." As the charges piled up against Donna like a collapsing tower, I finally felt hope that the truth might win. But then her lawyer reached out with a proposal I never saw coming, a one last twist in this ongoing nightmare. Half a year later, we sat in an actual courtroom, watching Donna cling to her innocence with disturbing commitment. Her legal team tried to paint her as a passionate volunteer merely trying to uphold neighborhood standards. The performance was astonishingly disconnected from reality. But evidence doesn't lie. Neither do years of financial statements. The prosecutor played our security footage for the judge and jury. On that massive courtroom screen, everything looked surreal and undeniable. Rick's phony uniform, the plastic badge mid-fall, Donna orchestrating the break-in like a tactical op, and then both of them running off after being startled by my 13-year-old son's toy gun. Rick, who had agreed to a plea deal in exchange for his testimony, laid everything bare. 5 years of calculated harassment campaigns aimed at driving families from their homes. He described how they'd craft fake violation letters, mimic legal documents, and terrorize residents under the guise of HOA regulation, all to force sales and award contracts to Donna's family firm. His confession revealed it wasn't just bullying, it was a meticulously organized operation. generating hundreds of thousands of dollars through manipulation and fear. The entire courtroom gasped when Rick admitted that anyone who resisted was subjected to relentless pressure until they gave in or lost everything fighting it. Just when we thought we'd heard it all, a former treasurer for the board testified. Her words cut deep. She said Donna had threatened her son's career if she didn't approve the inflated contracts. "I stayed quiet because I saw what happened to others who spoke up," she said, voice trembling. Financial records confirmed the staggering truth that Donna's family had made over $200,000 from exaggerated community projects and rigged maintenance deals. "What we experienced was merely the final chapter in a criminal operation masquerading as community management." The judge granted Eli the chance to speak. "And I've never been more proud. She made our whole family afraid to live in our own home," he said, facing the courtroom with steady eyes. Eli looked Donna square the eyes with a calmness far beyond his 13 years. "No one should be allowed to wield that much power over others," he said firmly. "What she did was wrong, and I'm proud I stood up to her." The entire courtroom sat in complete silence as he spoke. Several jurors discreetly wiped tears from their eyes. Donna, on the other hand, couldn't meet his gaze. She stared down at the floor like a scolded child. The contrast was striking. This young boy, armed only with a toy, had shown more backbone than a grown woman who had spent years tormenting her neighbors for profit. I looked over at Rachel, who had been gripping my hand tighter with each word Eli spoke. Her face was filled with pride, but there was a trace of sorrow too for all the time our family had spent living in fear. What came out in court was deeply disturbing. 7 former homeowners shared eerily similar accounts of harassment. They had all been pressured into selling their homes far below market value, only for urgent community projects to begin shortly afterward. Projects always handled by Donna's family construction firm. The tactics were calculated. Families with children were often the first targets. Fake authority figures would show up to scare them, while Donna's network of informers isolated the victims from their neighbors. What she had built wasn't just a corrupt board, it was a full-blown criminal syndicate, except instead of offering protection, she was the threat. When the jury returned, the verdict was clear: guilty on all charges: fraud, harassment, conspiracy, impersonating law enforcement. Donna was sentenced to 18 months in prison, ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution, and banned from ever holding a position in any HOA again. Rick, who had posed as a fake officer, received 6 months and community service for his involvement. As they were led out of the courtroom, I couldn't stop thinking about all the families who had suffered for years because they lacked proof or the strength to fight back. The judge's final statement was unforgettable. He described Donna's operation as a calculated betrayal of neighborly trust and condemned how she twisted the idea of community leadership into a money-making scheme. Then he added, with deliberate force, "Let this be a warning to anyone who hides their tyranny behind paperwork." The transformation in our neighborhood was swift and powerful. A new HOA president was elected in a landslide, someone who genuinely cared about the residents and their needs. Donna's arbitrary rules were tossed out, and fear gave way to real cooperation. Not only did we keep our basketball hoop, but we added a proper play area for Eli and all the local kids. Some neighbors even pitched in to repaint the old picnic space near the trail. Our house, once the center of conflict, became the heart of a healing community. Kids laughing, neighbors chatting over fences, the way it always should have been. Eli became something of a local legend, and not just to kids, but to plenty of adults too. His confidence skyrocketed. He was teaching other kids problem-solving skills, still working on engineering experiments, and now unafraid to speak out when something wasn't right. One weekend, I caught him leading a group of second graders and wiring up motion detectors that sprayed water on anyone doing suspicious clipboard activity. That playground we built, it became the unofficial town square. Watching the kids play where our basketball hoop once stood felt symbolic, a proof that we'd turned Donna's campaign of fear into something beautiful. Donna, meanwhile, was forced to sell her mansion to pay off legal fees and restitution. Her family's construction business lost every community contract and their reputation was beyond repair. The stolen money was returned to the families who had been harmed, and for the first time in years, the work being done around the neighborhood was honest, fairly priced, and beneficial. property values rebounded, and families who had considered moving decided instead to stay and rebuild. Even the neighborhood Facebook group felt different. Less complaints, more posts about block parties, bake sales, and lost dogs. Our experience sparked change far beyond our street. Across 3 counties, residents voted to replace authoritarian HOA boards with ones that actually served homeowners. What started with a single family standing up to injustice became the spark for a movement. But it didn't happen by accident. It took proof of video footage, careful records, and a refusal to stay silent in the face of abuse. The ripple effect continued. New rules were implemented to ensure that no one else could exploit their neighbors the way Donna had. One local newspaper dubbed Eli the kid who ended the clipboard cult. He didn't mind the nickname. In fact, I think he kind of loved it. When people ask me what happened to Donna, I tell them the truth. We didn't take her down. She did that to herself the moment she chose control over community. Because the truth, it always finds its way out, especially when you document everything and refuse to back down. The real takeaway isn't just about corrupt HOAs. It's about neighbors standing up for one another. About people protecting each other from those who misuse authority for personal gain. As I finish writing this, Eli is out front with half the neighborhood kids, locked in an epic water war using his custom-made devices. Laughter echoes down the street where fear once ruled. Rachel and I are sitting on the porch, watching Eli teach the younger kids how to use their Nerf blasters safely. She turns to me and says, "He really did open fire that night." I smile, put my arm around her, and say, "Yeah, and that changed everything." Because sometimes, the smallest acts of bravery, like a kid with a toy gun, can topple the biggest bullies. And now our son is leading the next generation of neighborhood defenders, armed with nothing more than imagination, courage, and the unshakable belief that when good people stand together, no tyrant can win. The message is simple: if you're dealing with an homophobia or any kind of harassment, don't go it alone. Keep records, find allies, and remember, the scariest battles often lead to the sweetest victories. Truth, community, and courage can dismantle any dictatorship, even the ones hidden in cul-de-sacs. And sometimes all it takes is a camera, a Nerf gun, and the courage to say, "Not here, not anymore." Maybe Eli didn't fire a real weapon, but what he did that night reshaped everything for us, for him, for our street. If this story made you laugh, gave you chills, or reminded you of something in your own life, drop a comment. I read them all. Hit like and subscribe if you want more stories like this. And if you feel like supporting us directly, there's a little thanks button below. It makes a big difference and helps us keep these stories coming. Until next time, stay safe, stay bold, and never underestimate what one determined kid with foam darts can do. We're in a drama nest, and this is just one of many unbelievable stories. Stick around for the next Tonia, we promise. It's even wilder.